I think the most interesting part of this book is the Tongan music sheet or music notes. We can see the different chants from the ula to the langi, right through to the metupaki. These music chants were a reflection of the Pacific interconnectivity. It mentions here that we know that Tonga was one of the main islands that borrowed a lot of the performances or dances from other Pacific islands. The chants or the performances called ula, the kind of singing which is accompanied by the dance so core. To this, most of the index specimens belong generally in the Hamo language. So we know from William Mariner's recounts that the ula was from or could potentially be from the Samoa Islands. The ula has transformed over time or modernized over time into Whahai ula that we see today. The resource that I have in front of me is a book called An Account of the Natives of the Tonga Islands in the South Pacific Ocean, with an original grammar and vocabulary of their language, compiled and arranged by the extensive communications of Mr. William Mariner, several years resident in those islands. William Mariner was part of a ship that was called Port-au-Prince. It docked in Tufuga, Hawaii. There were about 22 people on board, and majority of them were killed. 4 of them were spared. According to the stories written, William Mariner resembled Chief Finau Ulukalala's son, and so he sort of took him under his wing and cared for him as if it was his own son. So he was around 14 or 15 years old. William Mariner was given the title Toki Ukamea, which means Iron Axe, by Chief Finau Ulukalala. William Mariner was there for about 4 years, between 1806 and 1810. He shadowed Finau around the island of Vava'u, and through that time, he learned a lot of the Tongan traditions. And because Finau was a high chief or one of the prominent figures of Tonga, William Mariner was sort of being immersed in that Tongan culture. Wherever he went as a prominent person, William Mariner was with him. So the book is a recount of William Mariner's experiences in Tonga. This includes Tongan culture, Tongan traditions, Tongan events, music, politics. I am going to read a portion of an introduction written by John Martin. In the year 1811, I accidentally heard that Mr. William Mariner had been a resident at the Friendly Islands during the space of 4 years. In the course of 3 or 4 interviews, I discovered, with much satisfaction, that the information he was able to communicate respecting the people with whom he had been so long and so intimately associated was very far superior to anything that had yet appeared before the public. His young and flexible mind had so accorded itself with the habits and circumstances of the natives that he could not feel any disposition to overrate or embellish what to him was neither strange nor new.
So this is the piece of the music in his own writing. It's very hard for me to understand, but with the help of the elderly, I work right through with to translate to the proper reading of the Tongan language. I was pleased that those elders is helping me out for this. O ia we, ko mau te ufolau, ka tuku mo ungalafa, pea mo talau. Ko holi ke unofo, ko hai tene alu. Ka tuku wawau mo e motu lalo, liku one mo wawaka. Mo e halawai ki makapapa, mataloko mo whanga maile, a ana talau I mo foe. I kai te utuu ki he hifo anga. Si o hifo ki he folau ta whanga, tuku he toki lea a haa folohau, ke wala ngahi a Tufuga mo kau. These people will be leaving and they will travel. They will folau. That's what it means. He moved around in other Pacific Island, Marshall, Futuna, Samoa. He's got generations there in Samoa. I know the Mariner family there. I was working with a grandson in the 60s, and he's a mariner, and he talked about his family in Tonga. And when I read the book, yeah, I know. So it was really interesting. And I think that our generation, or even our own Samoan or Tongan born New Zealand, that there is a lot of koloa, a lot of the values that it's hold. And now the music, the dancing are referring to the previous work of the past, and then they revive it. It's great for the people of Tonga, and as well as people of Samoa. They are looking back with what all these taonga are held. Yeah.
When I heard about William Mariner, I saw him as someone who, even though he was like someone coming outside from the culture, his insight into the Tongan culture wasn't challenging or discriminatory towards the Tongan people. It's a very unique account for someone who was basically raised in the Tongan culture. When we were growing up, we hear about all this like happened back then and before the Christians came and brought Christianity to Tonga, and I didn't know that we have like a proper text that actually brings that perspective to life. He writes about specific songs that I believe that we still continue to sing, dance, perform today. The Tongan language, for example, I remember there was a few words like tupo or something. Like today we say it as T-U-P-O-U, but then for him back then it was like T-A-B-O-O or something. But at least you had like the beginnings of the Tongan language becoming a written language because of the legacy that he left. Very grateful for Mariner, and I feel like that might cause some discussions, but in my opinion, I feel like if we didn't have that unique insight, we wouldn't be able to see how life was back then, because we'll just be limited to the text from the missionaries, for example. And obviously the missionaries, in my opinion, kind of looked at the culture as being very primitive. If it wasn't for Mariner's sort of account, we wouldn't be able to see the beauty of the culture pre-European times.
We can understand that colonialism was widespread throughout the Pacific in the early 1800s. And through this time, a lot of European presence were starting to grow within the Pacific. William Mariner, for instance, was one of those people in the Pacific, not by choice. And so his experiences of Tonga became a historical resource for Tongan people to look back into pre-Christianity and at a time when European presence was starting to grow. So I guess for researchers, they can use this book just to understand or gain an insight into what was once Tonga in the 1800s, that docking point for Tongan people to look at what was once their livelihood.